Brahmagupta was an Indian mathematician that lived about 1,400 years ago. And he is given the credit for, first of all, turning 0 into an actual number rather than only a placeholder. And also, he's given the credit for working out the rules for adding and subtracting, multiplying and dividing with negative numbers. He wrote a poem that went something like this and explains some of these rules. A debt minus 0 is a debt. A fortune minus 0 is a fortune. Now, a debt he would have considered to have been a negative number. So anything on this side of the number line, and remember the number line hadn't been invented at that stage, but anything on this side, any negative number would be considered a debt. So if I had a 0 like this, and it says a debt minus 0, so if I said minus 2 minus 0, it's a debt minus 0, I would end up with a debt, minus 2. And that's clear. If we're on the number line here at minus 2 and we subtract nothing from it, we still have a debt. A fortune, on the other hand, was considered to be a positive number. So if I took a positive number like 2 and it said here minus 0 from that, it remained a positive number. 0 minus 0, he said, was just 0. That seems to make a lot of sense. And then it says a debt subtracted from 0 is a fortune. So if we use the numbers, if we put 0 down there and we subtract a debt. Now a debt is a negative number, so we subtract a debt, and we may just put our brackets around there. A debt 0 minus a debt is a fortune. Now, logically, that makes sense, because if I have nothing and I take away a debt, I must actually be getting a fortune or a positive value. And likewise, it says a fortune subtracted from 0. So if I subtract a fortune, that would be a positive number, subtracting a fortune, a positive number, I end up with a debt. Now let's think about that. If I have nothing and I take money away, I'm actually in debt, aren't I? So it actually made a lot of sense. So how does this work when we deal with arithmetic? Well, let's look at this one here. Here's minus 2 on the number line right here. And if I add 3, or if you like, add a fortune of 3, I move this way on the number line and I end up with actually a fortune. So in this case, I end up with 1. If I start with negative 8, let's say a debt of 8, there it is down here, and I add a fortune, but only one fortune to it, so here we go to there, I'm actually still in debt, but I'm not in as much debt. So I've gone to minus 7. If I have a fortune, let's say worth 5, and I have debts of 7, so I take away 7, well, it's actually taking away a fortune, sorry, it's taking away a positive number, minus 7, taking away 7 fortunes, I actually end up right down here. So there's 5 and another 2, sorry, 5 goes to here, and then another 2, I end up with a debt of minus 2. And what about this? Well, if I start with a debt of minus 3, let's say I'm starting here at minus 3. Now remember, I'm using the word debt and fortune like Brahmagupta did. I'm still really only working with negative 3. And if I take away a fortune, clearly I'm going to go this way. So I go from minus 3 down 1, 2, 3, and I end up with more debt, down to minus 6. What about, though, if we add or subtract negative numbers? Well, let's have a look at it. If I start with 7 and I add a debt, if I add a debt to you, wouldn't we go the other way, this way? And in fact, that's what happens. I go back 2 to 5. So that becomes 5. In fact, it's really the same as 7 minus 2. What about this one? I start with minus 2 and I'm adding more debt to the tune of 3 lots. 1, 2, 3. I'm definitely going to become poorer according to Brahmagupta. So I go back 3. 1, 2, 3. Down to minus 5. So once again, this is the same as starting at minus 2 debt, and I'm actually subtracting 3 in a sense. If I go to 1, so I'm starting at 1, I've got a fortune, but this time it says I'm taking away a debt. Now if you take away a debt from somebody, they actually become richer in a sense. So in other words, we're going to move in this direction. So if I take away a debt of 3, I'm going to move 1, 2, 3 up to here, which is 4. So in fact, it's going to be the same as 1 plus 3. So taking away a negative number or taking away a debt is the same as adding that number. And likewise, if I start at minus 6, so I'm in debt, all right, that is my minus 6, but I'm taking away a debt. So I'm actually going to get rich. I'm going to move towards the right. Now, I'm not going to make it. I'm still going to be in debt because I'm only going 2 places this way, but I'm going to end up in minus 4 territory. So if you like, that's the same as minus 6, and I'm actually adding 2, and I get my answer. Now, that's very interesting. Look, there's a plus and a minus together is the same as actually just taking away the number. And down here, if I'm subtracting a debt or subtracting a negative number, that's the same as adding that last number. So, is there a quick way to do it? And the answer is yes, there is. When I have 2 pluses next to each other, like 2 plus 3. Now remember, there's an imaginary, well, an invisible 3 in here because it's 3. When I've got those together, that's exactly the same as just a plus. So that's the same as 2 plus 3. I can exchange 2 symbols like this for the 1 symbol. When I do this, now I've got a plus and a minus. Remember, if we go back to here, a plus and a minus was the same as a minus. So the rule is, if you're adding a debt, you're actually taking away, aren't you? So you can actually replace, when you're adding a debt, you're taking away. So if I have 2 plus minus 1, if I replace those 2 with a takeaway sign, 2 minus 1, I get my solution, which is 1. 2 minus 1 is 1. So I can replace a plus and a minus together like this with one sign. And it actually works the same way when a minus and a plus are going the other way. So if I have a debt and then there's a plus there, minusing a fortune is actually still taking away as well. So if I have 2 and I take away, I'll put here, say 4, a fortune, but that'll be taking away a plus 4, a fortune. That actually is the same as 2 minus 4. And if you think about the number line, here we go, there's 0. I start at 2 and I go back 1, 2, 3, 4. I end up with minus 2. And finally, when 2 minuses together, when I take away a debt, that's the same as adding a fortune, so that's a plus. So 2 minus 1 can be replaced, those 2 together can be replaced with 2 plus 1, which is going to be 3. So the rules are 2 pluses together right next to each other is the same as a plus. So 2 plus 3, or 2 plus 3 is right, that stays as normal. A plus and a minus becomes a minus, so 2 plus a minus 1, well, that will give us 2 minus 1. If it's a minus and a plus, 2 minus 4 or 2 minus plus 4, still a minus, that's logical. And if it's 2 minuses together, like 2 minus minus 1, we actually get 2 plus 1, which is 3. Now, just talking about this one here for a minute, that looks very confusing, and it actually looks like this. When we often write it down, we actually put the second one in a bracket, so it's 2 minus, if you like, debt of minus 1. So we put a bracket there to separate them, but still those two minuses together become a plus. 2 plus 1. Now we need to practice those rules. Look, 2 pluses become a plus, 2 minuses become a plus, and when the signs are opposite, they're replaced with a negative in both cases. It's a good way to learn it.